Hey everybody, what's going on? Shad Dales here in our latest TDR Weekly Recap presented by Dutchie. Just about head to Washington, but we got to get into the weekly recap because a lot went down across cannabis, hemp, and Capitol Hill this week, and it all starts with what's easily the biggest policy shakeup we've seen in years. What a week it was. What is it? Well, a lot of you following this space already know what it is, but if you haven't, then let's get into it in our latest TDR Trade to Black Weekly Recap presented by Dutchie. All right, let's begin with big, and I mean big news out of Washington. Congress has finally released its long-awaited federal spending package, and the hemp industry is, let's just say, not in a celebratory mood this week, because tucked inside the text is a sweeping re-criminalization of many hemp-derived intoxicating products like Delta 8, Delta 10, and basically anything else that gets you high or is marketed like it does. The point here is simple. They want to close the 2018 Farm Bill loophole, but the new definition doesn't just close the loophole, it slams the door shut. It applies THC limits to total THC, bans synthesized cannabinoids, and sets a maximum of 0.4 milligrams of total THC per product. So when you factor that in, that's less THC than what's in a standard CBD tincture sitting in a health store right now. Yeah, eye-opener. So what was the industry's response? Full-on panic mode. First up, Jim Higdon of Cornbread Hemp says the CBD remains legal. Talking point is misleading because the cap would wipe out almost every full-spectrum CBD product on shelves today, along with a $30 billion hemp market employing over 400,000 people. It's a lot of people. But while hemp operators warn of economic fallout, groups like Attach say this is exactly what Congress intended in 2018, and that unregulated toxicants targeting minors has gotten way out of hand. And just when you think the bill couldn't spark more controversy, Congress also stripped out the long-awaited language that would have finally allowed VA doctors to recommend medical cannabis to veterans. That's a big loss for them as well. So both chambers, they supported it earlier this year, but it quickly vanished in the final text. So really one industry gets re-prohibited, and then you've got a vulnerable population who gets told to keep waiting, and somehow Congress, they're frustrating both sides all at once. Oh, Washington. And that brings us directly into the next part of the story, because the drama, let's face it did not stop here this week. A lot of drama this week, and that was the showdown at the Senate. As this language became public, the Senate turned into the stage for something we almost have never seen, a real floor fight over cannabis and hemp policy. So what happened? Well, Senator Rand Paul, he stepped up first with an amendment to remove the ban entirely. He warned that Congress was regulating the hemp industry to death and destroying businesses that followed the rules Congress wrote back in 2018. But it is a little misleading on some of the stuff that he said. In a decisive vote, it was 76-24. The Senate tabled the amendment, meaning the ban stayed in the bill. Now, here's where things get interesting. Two Republicans broke from leadership to side with pro-hemp Democrats. Who were they? Well, one was Mike Braun, and the other, surprisingly, was guess who? Ted Cruz. So Cruz said he doesn't support a one-size-fit-all federal prohibition and believes states should run their own hemp and cannabis policies. So that's a rare split from a lawmaker who has spent years criticizing recreational cannabis. And therein lies the issue. Hemp, cannabis, it's all the same thing. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell, the architect of hemp legalization, has now taken the lead on dismantling it, arguing that intoxicating hemp products were never part of the deal and are now being sold with candy packaging and cartoon branding. Couldn't really understand some of the words that he was saying, but you understand the point. And while this all unfolds, the alcohol lobby is loudly cheering the ban from one of the sidelines because they know their market share is getting smaller. So long story short, yeah, a lot happened in DC this week. And while it was busy waging a policy battle, there's another major political shift that's happening down south, and that brings us obviously to the Sunshine State in Florida. All right, so what's going on in Florida? Well, there's a brand new Fabrizio and Lee poll from a GOP-aligned firm showed 89% of Florida voters want the right to vote on adult-use cannabis legalization. Yes, this is what we need to hear. So this isn't a partisan story. It's 94% of Democrats, 93% of independents, and 84% of Republicans. Think about that. So impressive numbers here. But there's also a twist. The fight isn't about whether voters support legalization. It's about whether state officials will even allow the question on the 2026 ballot. They need to. So Smart and Safe right now, they have over 660 verified signatures and is suing the state over delays and rejected petitions. Governor DeSantis says the measure is in big-time trouble, while Trulieve continues to bankroll the campaign. No love lost between Kim Rivers and Ron DeSantis. So if the court greenlights it, Florida becomes one of the biggest cannabis markets in the world. But if not, the political smoke show, it will definitely continue. Either way, this ties directly into another major theme from this week, because as politicians fight about bans and ballots, industry leaders are trying to shape what responsible policy could look like. So what do I mean by that? Well, Tilray, they stepped forward this week with one of the clearest messages yet. And here's what they said. Don't ban hemp beverages. Regulate them properly. They argue prohibition will push products underground, not remove them, and that a reasonable national standard like 10 milligram Delta 9 per serving, it would align with state cannabis norms already working today. So Tilray isn't saying hemp beverages are their main business, but they are saying the chaos created by a ban is far worse than building a proper regulatory lane. And I agree with them. And while policy dominated headlines, the business side of the industry delivered an equally busy week. So let's shift from Washington now to Wall Street, because earnings season was continue on this week. And again, there are some great companies with some great prints here this week. And we're talking the biggest news of the week, and that is Village Farms, who delivered one of the strongest quarters in the entire sector. We're talking $66.7 million in net sales, up 21%, $10.8 million in net income, record operating cash flow, 56% margins in Canada, and 758% growth in international medical exports. So this wasn't just a good quarter, it was a turning point. So job well done by Michael DeJulio and team. And right behind Village Farms was another big Canadian company, and that's Rubicon Organics, who delivered a textbook example of disciplined growth in premium cannabis, even with capacity constraints. So here's the breakdown in their latest earnings. They reported $15.6 million in revenue, up 16% year over year, another record quarter, $1.7 million adjusted EBITDA, their sixth straight positive quarter, $2.8 million in operating cash flow, $43 million net revenue year to date. That's up 25% year over year. They also hit some major strategic milestones. They secured a Health Canada license for their Cascadia facility, with first crops in 2025 and sales in 2026. They expanded vapes into the all-in-one category, exported product into Australia. They secured $4 million in new debt to support growth as well. And the performance tells the bigger story. Premium flower plus pre-roll shares were up 5.7 to 6.2%. Premium vapes now 13.2% they share nationally, from 0% a year ago. Think about that. Wildflower as well remains the number 2 topical brand in Canada at a 27% share. So all in all, it was not a flashy quarter, but it was a strong one, a highly controlled, profitable, and premium-driven quarter for Rubicon Organics. So again, job well done by Margaret Brody and team. Speaking of turning points, the next operator had one of their toughest quarters, but with a deliberate purpose. So who was that? Well, Glasshouse Brands. They saw revenue fall to $38.4 million, nearly half of last year's number, and margin compression from 50% down to 31%. But this wasn't a market collapse, it was a self-imposed production reset following internal restructuring. What was some of that? Well, lower planting volume meant fewer pounds and higher cost per pound. So what is the bright side in all this? Well, retail continues to outperform California's broader market, and their refinancing significantly cleaned up the balance sheet. Also important to communicate too that Glasshouse is now available on Robinhood, a big step for them, and hopefully we see more of these trends for the overall industry. Can't forget about that. So let's turn our attention to none other than Ascend Wellness, who came in with the following: $124.7 million in revenue, $31.1 million adjusted EBITDA, a steady improvement in margins, and a wild stat, 420 new SKUs launched this year. They're expanding retail, expanding product, and expanding margins all at the same time. So an interesting one by Ascend Wellness. So now from their steady climb to a company where the story depends on which accounting column you read. Let's now focus on Grown Rogue, and 2 stories really at once. Pro forma numbers, $8.5 million in revenue, $1.7 million in EBITDA, solid 20% margins. In New Jersey, margins neared 47%, but IFRS numbers look softer due to mix and accounting. So what's the real takeaway in all this? Operational strong, with Minnesota as the next big chapter. That's the big takeaway here. And speaking of chapters, let's now look at the cannabis company holdings. And right now, this is a company that's shrinking to grow. Revenue is down to $79.9 million. Adjusted EBITDA came in at $3 million. Cash is now up to $17.8 million. They exited Florida. They're optimizing Pennsylvania and leaning into Ohio and Delaware. So it's a controlled contraction, but let's face it, it's a necessary one. And now for the company that's facing the biggest reset of all, we now turn to Tilt Holdings, where shareholders are being wiped out. Tilt entered into a full CCAA restructuring, meaning operations continue, creditors are now taking over, shareholders are going to lose everything. Jupiter Research, though, will stay intact. So really, this is a harsh outcome, but unavoidable given their debt load. We've seen this story before with Air Wellness and now Tilt Holdings, and we could see more in the future. All right, let's wrap up this segment of earnings with one final report as we turn our attention now to Planet 13, who posted $23.3 million in revenue, down sharply, $44 million in net loss, mostly non-cash. So after exiting California and cutting legacy assets, underlying margins appear to be stabilizing, with Nevada and Florida now the core focus heading to 2026. We've spoken to Larry Scheffler a few times, and the last message we got from him is Florida is a main priority for them. So that's the full picture here this week: the congressional chaos, the Senate showdown, the Florida battle, Tilray's policy push, and a jam-packed earnings week that showed us exactly who's executing and who is rebuilding and really who's not. Really, the key takeaway here is Washington, they're rewriting the rules, the states are pushing back, and the operators, they're adapting, well, they need to in real time. A moment of truth now for this industry as we head into the end of 2025, heading into 2026. So what'd you all think of this breakdown? What was the thing that caught your attention this week? Obviously, the news out of Washington pertaining to this nationwide ban for hemp intoxicating products. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback, love to get your take on all this. And really, let's face it, it was a crazy week for the space. Also, one last thing, make sure to scan this QR code if you want to stay up to date on daily information about the reform and business side of the cannabis industry. Basically, this full weekly recap, you can scan this QR code and become a daily baked-in newsletter subscriber that gives you all this information on a daily basis. Again, giving you all important information on the reform and business side of the cannabis and hemp industries. Hopefully they form into a unified coalition, because that's where this needs to go. Big wake-up call. That's it for now, everybody. Make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications as well here at TDR Trade to Black, presented by Dutchie. That's it for now, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Also, just want to quick mention, too, that we're headed to Washington tomorrow, so hopefully we get some intel pertaining to the biggest topic of all, which is cannabis rescheduling. So make sure you stay connected, as we will go live from Washington on Monday at 4, 5, maybe 6 o'clock. There's a few politicians that will be in the building, so we'll keep you posted on the timeline as to when we go live. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching.